The Sonic the Hedgehog series is famous for having a ton of spin-off games. Now, these spin-off games vary in quality. We've all heard of the Sonic Advance games. We've all heard of the Shadow the Hedgehogs. We know the Sonic Riders games, Sega All-Star Racing games, even the Sonic Spinball games. There's always been an abundance of spin-offs. But there is a lot of Sonic games that a lot of you have never heard of before. So in today's video, we're going to talk about 12 Sonic games that you've never heard of before. So guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. I'll give you a second to do that. And hopefully you have on notifications so you never miss banger content like this ever again. And hopefully by the end of this video, there's at least one game on this list that you've never heard of. So that being said, let's get right into it. All right, first up on the list, we have Sonic Cosmo Fighters. This was an arcade game released back in 1993. And the reason why this video was actually inspired was because the English version of this game, the ROM, recently leaked out. So we're able to actually hear probably what, in my opinion, might be the first ever Sonic voice actor. The reason why I chose this game, as you can see, it's like a little arcade fighter. It's nothing really that cool or unique, but it has Sonic in it. But this game is actually one of the first games where Sonic is actually voiced, and it is very, very interesting. I'm gonna roll the clip for you guys.
Hi, my name is Sonic. Dr. Robotnik is trying to capture our friends at the space station. Let's take off through space to rescue them. It's all over, Sonic.
So I have no idea why bro sounds like that, but I did find it very interesting that that was kind of like the first ever Sonic in-game voice actor. Obviously, we had Jaleel White, and I know there was like some voice lines in Sonic CD. That is the first game, and let's move on to some more obscure Sonic games. Next up, we have a game that you may or may not heard of, Sonic Unleashed, but this is not the Sonic Unleashed you're thinking about. It's not the one for the Xbox 360 or PS3. It's not even the one that came out for the Wii, which might be a little bit more obscure. No, this was made for like flip phone type devices. As you see right here, we got the Hedgehog running around in like 14 FPS right now. This is the exact opposite of what Sonic Unleashed actually turned out to be. But if you guys look, it's got a little bit of boost gameplay. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Sonic Rush if you think about it. Obviously, it doesn't look as clean, but there is something that is kind of like charming about this. This game actually features a spin dash. It's got a little bit of Sonic Rush, Sonic Advance type vibes, but also if you listen to the music, game has kind of like its own little charm to it. So you may or may not have heard this. This one's not as rare, but certainly I think some people might be caught off guard by this. But let's move on to the next unknown Sonic game. Next up, we have another obscure game that you actually might have heard of. Certainly you'll see people like meme about this on Twitter, but the third game is Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop. This is another arcade spin-off game, and it's basically pretty self-explanatory. Sonic and Tails, I guess they run a popcorn shop. You have this very funny scene of Eggman frolicking, which is, I guess, really cool. Okay, sure. And I guess the objective of this game is Sonic has popcorn and he's trying to run away from a frolicking Eggman with a hammer. Bro, yo, why does my boy move like that, dude? This is actually hilarious. I guess you gotta like spin an arcade ball or something like that to move faster. Bro, what is this game, dude? Oh my goodness, but it's still pretty cool. So yeah, that's Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop. You may or may not have heard of it. Let's move on to the next game. The next game we have is Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World. So this was an educational game released for Sega Pico. If you guys look right here, this is actually what it looked like. It looks like a little computer pad or device or something like that. I'm not really sure. According to the Wikipedia article, it was an utter failure in the West, but was actually quite successful in Japan. Here's some of the gameplay. You see some of these sprites of Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Eggman. They actually look really good. So apparently this is an educational game, but I'm looking at it and it does look a lot more fun as opposed to like learning. Like, you know, learning games aren't that fun. It has just like a ton of mini games, as you see right here. It has like that game where you like roll the ball into the thing. I don't know what this game is called. It's got some other mini games. Like basically this game is just full of mini games that apparently educate you. I don't really know where the education's happening. Maybe it's the counting, maybe it's the numbers. You got Eggman Whack-A-Mole. Like, I don't know what you could actually learn from this. Like, they got a claw machine. This kind of reminds me of that level in Sonic Mania, the Flying Battery Zone remake with the claw machine. Maybe that's what that's from. I don't really know. Basically, there is a ton of games for the system, ton of mini games. Was apparently supposed to teach people stuff, but I guess that's why this game failed. I would never personally play this. I don't know. Actually, I lied. This game does kind of look like Peak Fiction, but let's move on to the next obscure Sonic game. And keeping it on subject, we have another Sega Pico game. It was actually Tales and the Music Maker. You see right here. This game actually looks like Peak Fiction. Essentially, the purpose of this game was to, I guess, maneuver stuff around to make like beats and make songs and stuff like that. This game was also considered an educational game. It looks like there is a little bit of platforming in it. I don't think Tails can fly, but interestingly enough, Tails does kind of have his like adventure of Sonic the Hedgehog look, which is pretty cool. It doesn't have like the actual in-game model of Tails, but overall, just another very interesting game. I gotta say, some of these educational spin-offs are pretty good. Oh my god, was that the Psy Loop? Anyone who's played Sonic Frontiers knows that that's where the Psy Loop came from. I think, guys, this is like an educational trip down memory lane for Sonic. Oh my goodness. But yeah, that's the Tails Music Maker game. Let's move on to the next game. Hey, next up, you've heard of Mario Golf. You've heard of basically every Mario sports game. He plays baseball. This guy plays every sport, right? But have you heard of Sonic the Hedgehog Golf? Well, let's roll the clip. Essentially, this is another mobile game for Java, and once again, running at like 10 FPS, but this is a game where Sonic plays golf, and I gotta say, this one actually does look kind of fun. If I had a phone like this, or maybe if they expanded on this and made more Sonic spin-off games, that'd be pretty cool, but this is Sonic the Hedgehog Golf. You may or may not have heard of this because I personally haven't, but let's move on to the next game. All right, next up, to keep it on brand with the Mario comparisons, we actually have a Sonic and the Olympic Games for mobile. No, not the one from like the App Store. We have one for Java that came out back in 2008. Now, this one I've definitely never heard of before. I mean, obviously, we've all heard of the franchise Mario and Sonic, but I was like, yo, there's no way Nintendo's gonna let this one fly. But this one's actually just a Sonic and the Olympic Games. I think because Sega is the one that actually owns the license to the Olympic Games, or is at least the developer of it, they're only including Sonic, so it's actually called Sonic and the Olympic Games. It only features Sonic characters. Obviously, there's no Mario people in there, but I never knew this existed, and I'm sure you probably didn't either. So I do find this to be very cool. Some of these Java games are very interesting. But with that being said, let's move on to the next game. All right, next up, we have a 1991 Sonic game. No, we're not talking about Sonic 1, which in my opinion is the most mid out of the 2D Sonic games. We're actually talking about Sonic Eraser, which was like a Tetris-type puzzle game. You guys see the gameplay right here. You have the original 1991 Sonic the Hedgehog sprite. You can actually play two-player cooperative and like compete against each other. It's pretty, you know, self-explanatory. Similar to Puyo Puyo, similar to Tetris. Oh my god, did Sonic just punch the other Sonic, bro? Yo, why is he dizzy right now, bro? I'm actually crying laughing at that. Yo, that's actually hilarious. But yeah, this is Sonic Eraser. Pretty unknown, pretty obscure, because personally, I haven't heard of it until I started doing my research for this video. But let's move on to the next game. Oh, wait, they're gonna fight again? Oh my god, they're fighting again, bro. Yeah, let's move on to the next game before it gets a little out of hand over here. All right, next up on this list, we're gonna talk about the best Sonic TV show ever, at least in my opinion, Sonic X. Growing up, this was probably one of my favorite shows of all time. A lot of people have always wanted a Sonic X game that might have featured like the Meta-Rex arc or something like that, you know what I mean? Maybe Sonic Adventure 3 could have been like the Meta-Rex plotline or something like that. But what if I told you that there already was a Sonic X video game? Well, guess what? There was a Sonic X game, but it was actually an educational game for the Leapster. You guys look right here. It even had a little bit of animation. You see Eggman right here. You got Sonic from Sonic X, has a similar art style, but looks very, yeah, I don't know. Many of you may not remember the Leapster. It was like an educational game. I think they used to sell these at like Walmart. I don't know what the deal is with Sonic and educational games, but this one was definitely the most out there. To say that this game was odd was definitely an understatement. So it had like the Sonic 3 sprite as like the main character. There's a little bit of platforming going on here, but you also have to like do these little quests to get like the numbers and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of just like educational aspects of the game as far as the gameplay goes. Some hub worlds. You had more animated cutscenes. Like this game was definitely interesting. I will say that. I think they would have been better off making an actual Sonic X game, but this is kind of the only one that we got. And there is a lot more to this game than you might think. So if you haven't seen this before, now you know. I think the most interesting part of this game is how the 2D Sonic 3 sprite actually like transitions into another 2D Sonic sprite that's completely different. It's very unique, but yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next game. All right, next up on the list, we have a game that's a little bit less obscure, but it's still pretty out there if you're not like a Sonic the Hedgehog fanatic. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog was actually the game that introduced Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo. As you can see right here, this game had like the trackball controls, other than Mighty, who was featured in Knuckles Chaotix, but Ray the Flying Squirrel actually never appeared in another game until Sonic Mania. Essentially, this is their debut game and pretty much their only game in the series, despite how popular they became after Sonic Mania Plus. It's actually interesting interesting enough, this game was supposed to appear on the Sonic Gems collection, but at the time, the emulation for the trackball was a little bit too complex, so it never made its way over. But I gotta say, this game actually does look really fun to play. I don't know about the trackball controls. There's something about this game with the isometric camera view, the quasi 2.5D art style, that seems very like captivating to me. This game is definitely obscure. Hopefully you might have learned a thing or two, but let's move on to the next game. All right, next up, we got an interesting one. So this game involves fishing. When you think of Sonic and you think of fishing, you think of this guy right here. But this game is actually a little different. This game that you've never heard of is actually called Sonic Fishing. So this is once again another random Java mobile game. I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't look anything like Sonic. I mean, it looks kind of like Sonic Adventure 1 in a way, like with the Big the Cat levels. In this game, I don't think we see any Sonic characters. Sonic Fishing, I don't even know if this counts as a Sonic game. All right, last but not least, we could not forget our boy Edgy the Hedgie. In the early 2000s, I think Shadow the Hedgehog was most famous for this. I can hear the sub 60 Metacritic score from here. Just kidding. I actually kind of like Shadow the Hedgehog when it came out. Game definitely aged like milk though. But to keep it on theme with Edgy the Hedgie, I present to you Shadow Shoot. This was another mobile Java game back in the day, and it looks like Shadow is getting a Chaos Emerald stolen by Eggman. It's the Eggman Advanced Sprite mixed with the Shadow the Hedgehog sprite from Sonic Battle. Seems like this game is kind of just like an endless runner. It seems kind of cool. Honestly, this game seems a little bit ahead of its time, you know? Shadow obviously has a gun in this game because why not? Not really sure what the point of this game is, but it does seem like a fun little game to pass the time by. If only we could get a Shadow the Hedgehog too, you know what I'm saying?